Syrians. And the Syrian government attaches a great importance to achieving this goal. The essence even of the 6 points plan of Mr. Kofi Annan is to put an end to violence and to help the Syrians to engage in an all-inclusive political dialogue. This is what it is about. This is the first point of the 6 point plan. And it's really pitiful that we haven't yet achieved even the fulfillment of the first item of the 6 point plan of Mr. Kofi Annan. So, as far as my government is concerned, we call on all those who are interested and concerned about the situation prevailing in some restive areas in Syria to push for resuming the mission of General Mood. I'm in your hands.
Sure. Ambassador Jafari, I noticed that you praised 2 of the 3 speakers that we've heard before you, General Mood and Ambassador Libadong. So I wanted to ask you about the one you didn't mention, Mr. Latsus. And I want to know, I guess, he works for the UN as well. He's the Undersecretary General of Peacekeeping. Some say that actually in his role in this is more either on the Western side or even just on the French side, in the sense of trying to bring about the end of the mission, trying to ratchet things up to Chapter 7 or something more. Is that your sense? What's the reason that you didn't speak to him, and what do you think is his role in the decision in the memo to suspend operations of the mission?
Well, actually, Mr. Latsus had briefed the Council many times in the past. But General Mood came today for the first time to attend by himself a session of the Security Council. This is why I refer to him by name, but also because of the content of what he said. He seemed to me a responsible general and balanced in his approach, and someone who knows very well what's going on the ground. He was very articulated when he answered one of your questions with regard to what happened in Al-Hula, for instance. This is very important. And by the way, I sent on behalf of my government the results of the National Commission of Inquiry with regard to what happened in Al-Hula, as well as in the other crime that took place in Al-Qubayr. Yes.
Mr. Ambassador, if you say that you were in favor of implementing Mr. Annan's plan and you're grateful for General Mood's report, why can your military not say, well, we're going to just institute a unilateral ceasefire and stay in place and not fire unless fired upon?
We did it many times, just for your kind information. The Syrian governmental forces did it many times, declaring a unilateral cessation of violence. It didn't fly. It didn't fly because the armed groups took advantage of the cessation of violence to receive further weapons and further reinforcements. So we did it, it didn't fly, unfortunately. But the very important point is that we are not only encouraging the 6 points plan of Mr. Kofi Annan, but we told General Mood and the members of the Security Council, as well as Mr. Latsus himself, because he went to Syria also. We told all of them how much we care about the success of the 6 points plan of Mr. Kofi Annan. And this is, of course, we are telling and reiterating our position on a daily basis to Mr. Annan himself. He is in a permanent contact with our Minister of Foreign Affairs in Damascus on a daily basis. Yes.
المساعدات التي تقدم إلى المتمردين بما في ذلك المساعدات من الأقمار الصناعية وكشف مواقع الجيش لاستهدافها من قبل المعارضة.
This is also allow me to answer in English so that everybody will take advantage of the answer. We have repeatedly said for months that the Syrian government is not dealing with exclusively peaceful demonstrations. Yes, there are peaceful demonstrations, but not everything occurring and taking place in Syria is about peaceful demonstrations. And thanks God, the Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon himself, concluded recently in one of his reports that it seems there is a third element. So he acknowledged the presence of a third element. Actually, this is a very polite term used by the Secretary General. He should have said Al-Qaeda elements, but he didn't. Rather than saying and identifying the nature of this third element by saying this is Al-Qaeda elements, terrorist groups coming from Arab countries such as Tunisia, Libya, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, rather than identifying these very important dimensions of the turbulence taking place in the components of the third element, the Secretary General preferred to use the term third element. Well, it's up to him. He's free to say whatever he wants. But the important point is that he acknowledged, and after him, Mr. Latsus, and after him, General Mood, and everybody now in the Council agrees on the fact that we are dealing with armed terrorist groups in Syria. The second point, we have notified, officially speaking, in an official letter, names of terrorists who were captured or who were killed. We notified to the Council the content of the ship, Lutf al-Latnain, with the names and the nature of the content and how many boxes and what kind and what types of weapons and where did they come from. All this information are in the hands of the members of the Security Council. What we are talking about is not unrealistic. This is very realistic. We have elements. The Security Council members know very well now that there is a terrorist dimension in the Syrian picture, and we have to deal with it. This is why these gentlemen today, all of them, told you that there is no plan B. The only way to push forward is to guarantee the success of the 6 points plan of Mr. Kofi Annan. Because now the dimensions of the picture are very well known to everybody. And there is no way that one dimension or two dimensions would be unnoticed. The picture is totally now well known to all the members of the Security Council. Please.
There's a rumor which says this suspension of the operations is a pre-planned scenario to add more forces and choppers and what.
Some people, some members in the council who were betting from the beginning on the failure of the mission of Mr. Kofi Annan had and still have this scenario, upgrading the mission of General Mood. Re-adopting the mission under Chapter 7, back to the idea of creating humanitarian corridors on the Turkish-Syrian border, back to the idea of establishing a no-fly zone. You know, all the new scenarios are still concocted and cooked from time to time by the same guys who are refusing to see the total picture of what's going on in Syria. The second point is that as long as everybody is saying that there is parties who have influence on the armed groups, what happened with these parties who have influence on the armed groups? Here I am referring to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and others. What happened? Where are the international efforts? Why we don't hear comments on this dimension of the issue? Somebody should speak to these parties who have influence on the armed groups, supplying them with weapons, sending terrorists, Al-Qaeda elements, providing them with haven ground, allowing them to cross the border with Syria, to carry on military operations and then to run away back to the territory of this neighboring country. This is too much. Really, this is too much. This is becoming so blatant and so flagrant that somebody should do something with this regard. People are talking publicly. Ministers, presidents, prime ministers, everybody is talking publicly about the necessity to push forward the crisis in Syria towards implosion and explosion. When somebody with a heavyweight, when a heavyweight in this United Nations organization speaks about the civil war in Syria, as if he is talking a joke, does he know what does it mean, a civil war in Syria? That means the explosion of all the area, not only Syria. That will impact on everybody in the area. People should be reasonable, calculate their words, think before speaking lightly, and act really with the sense of responsibility.
Ambassador, there have been reports recently of arms shipments to Syria from Russia. Could you confirm whether those reports may be true, and if so, the nature of the arms and what they've been used for?
As you know, Syria is a member state of the United Nations, and we got our independence in 1946, just for your kind information. We have an army, and the army needs weapons. So we are a state, and we are free to buy weapons from wherever we want. Don't equalize a state with armed groups. A state needs in military equipment are regulated by international law. There is no violation of international law. But when you speak about the groups, armed groups, who are supplied with weapons, illegally speaking, sneaked illegally into the country, then this is a problem, not whether the Syrian army is receiving weapons from this country or that country. Everybody is receiving weapons in the world, not only Syria. This is part of the daily life. There is an important dimension and important point to share with you with regard this our dear brothers and civilians trapped in the rebels' strongholds in Homs. These civilians, as I said, are our own people, and we have to guarantee their exit by all means. The government addressed this issue. The government addressed this issue, and we told General Mood as well as Kofi Annan and others that we need these parties who have influence on the armed groups to exert a serious pressure on these groups in order to let the civilians leave. Why we are saying this? It's because these civilians who are trapped, as I said, whose number is by hundreds, 150, 250 maximum, they are not allowed to leave by the armed groups themselves, because they are using them as human shields to blackmail the government. If you have any doubt with this, please go back to the Vatican Agency of Information, and they are saying exactly what we are saying. The Vatican Agency of Information is saying that the government is willing to let these people go, but the armed groups are not letting them leave the strongholds. Yes, please. You wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Ambassador. The Secretary General spokesman yesterday said that, excuse me, no monitors have been killed and none have been injured.
Yes.
General Mood just now said that there was no one instance that factored into his decision to pull the monitors from the field. You might think that such an instance, such a catalyst would be necessary to pull the monitors from the field in a monitoring mission as important and as focused upon as this one is. Are you concerned that what looks like a nebulous judgment call was used to pull them from the field? Are you concerned that they might not make it back out into the field very soon simply because an equally nebulous judgment call might be used to send them back out again? And also, are you concerned that this might be the first step that certain powers that be would use to call the monitoring mission a failure and move on to other alternatives?
Yes, indeed, some parties are betting on the failure of the mission, and they are doing their best in order to create all kinds of favorable conditions for the failure of this mission. This is why we insisted from the beginning on the necessity for us to protect the safety and security of the observers. And we are doing that ourselves, by our own forces. Because we knew from the beginning that the story of the Arab observers mission might be repeated. We got the lesson from the first experience. So we wanted to provide our own protection to these observers so that their security and their safety will not be jeopardized. And believe me, some parties would again betting on the fact that why not attacking these observers in order to embarrass the Syrian government, in order to embarrass somebody in the Security Council, so that they could upgrade the mission under Chapter 7. Life is not about angels, my friend. Life is about evils also. We have to be extremely careful with the plans concocted and planned by some parties who are not happy with the mission of Kofi Annan from the beginning. You may remember that the Emir of Qatar himself, 2 days after adopting the resolution 2043, he was in Rome when he said that he gives only 3% of chances of success to the mission. So I don't want to go into details because we have a lot of details here to reveal. Our national security is also important. We are a state, as I always say. We are a sovereign state, and in all the presidential statements and press statements and resolution of the Council, in all these very important tools of the international legitimacy, there is a clear-cut reference to safeguarding the sovereignty of Syria, the territorial integrity, the unity of Syria. So these are sacrosanct ideas that should be taken into consideration. I am saying this, and everybody else is saying this. You may remember the Prime Minister of England, what he said one day, when the troubles erupted in London. He said that, in answering one of the journalists, he said that when it is related to the national security, don't talk to me about human rights. I'm not repeating what he said. I'm saying we care about the human rights of our own people, but we cannot do everything alone. There are third parties involved in the domestic crisis in Syria, and everybody knows these third parties. I may enumerate them by name, and I did it in the past, and I am willing to do it again. So now the picture is clear-cut and crystal-cut, known for the members of the Security Council. It's not unknown now anymore who are the players in the Syrian domestic crisis. The Syrian government is totally committed to guaranteeing the success of the mission of Kofi Annan. And we would like this mission to resume. And we are ready to continue our protection of their safety and security. This is part of our strategy, our national strategy. We will not change.
Please. May I please follow up? I apologize. May I please follow up with respect to what you said in your position as a diplomat and the importance that every word that you say, as you just said, how important everything you say is, and with the regard that you have to give to UN officials. I'm asking you, do you feel like these monitors were pulled from the field too soon? When
I don't think so. I don't think
so.
so. I don't think so. There is no interest, neither nationally speaking nor internationally speaking. And Mr. Latsus told you that. There is no plan B. We should all focus on the success of the 6 points plan of Mr. Kofi Annan. Full stop. Yes, Madam.
What is being done to control the third force, and who do you think is behind it? I asked the President of the Security Council. He said we need to investigate the identity of the third force. But what actually can be done to stop the terrorist actions?
The government is doing its best in order to separate tackling the issue of the terrorist groups and the armed groups from the political process, because we have national legitimate opposition, peaceful national opposition, and it's a legitimate one. So we don't mix up everything and put everything, all the cards together. We separate combating terrorist groups and armed groups from continuing the political process referred to in Kofi Annan's plan. So the third parties, we said it many times. Now it has been proven that suicide bombings took place everywhere in Syria. And the identity of these criminals were revealed on the Syrian TV. We have their names, we have their families who confessed, we have everything. We know their names, we know where they came from, how old they were. Yesterday the Syrian authorities arrested one girl 18 years old, who used to travel to Turkey to receive instructions and to call Al Jazeera to give a wrong idea about what's going on in Syria. So it's a big mafia. It's not a small number of people. It's a big mafia manipulating everything, mixing up everything in order to diabolize the Syrian government. The issue is not protecting Syrian civilians for some guys in this council. The issue for them is to change the Syrian state. And they said it many times. For them, they don't care about the safety of the Syrian population and the Syrian people. They care only about how to get rid of President Assad, how to change the government. They call it regime. And they said that many ambassadors use the same term in front of you in here. So it is not anymore a secret for anybody that their main goal is not to help the Syrian people get back their safety and security. For them, they have different plans. They need to destroy the Syrian state and make the Syrian people suffering. Otherwise, how would you explain and expound the sanctions? Economic sanctions, European, American, Canadian, Australian. Why are these sanctions imposed on the Syrian people? If you want to help the Syrian people, you don't impose sanctions on the Syrian people. Why do you impose sanctions on the Minister of Electricity? What this poor guy did to the European and the Americans and the... What is this? This is an inanity. This is a nonsense. It doesn't make sense. This is not diplomacy. Thank you very much.